Breathe out. And welcome, Namaskaram, to The Outsiders, a podcast that is made for the end of Western civilization. Yes. And I usually don't want to talk about modern happenings. What are they? Current events. That's what they're called. Current events. Everything you see in the news is everything you see on the front page. The two quotes. The front page record men's failures. Only the sports page records their accomplishments. And the other thing is, everything that you see in the newspaper is public relations. Only the things that they don't want you to find out about is the news. And luckily, thanks to a couple different platforms, whether they want to or not, Reddit is helping a little bit. Who else is helping? Bumble, Rumble. No, not Bumble. That's something else. Rumble, Odyssey. Yeah, there's a couple. Telegram. Telegram is doing great. I love Telegram. The guy who founded Telegram made millions creating the Facebook for Russia, and then they forced him out of that company and probably threatened to murder him. And then he came and created Telegram because he wanted a free messenger that was not powered by advertising, that wasn't selling your information. And I liked it. I've liked it. I've used it. There's a couple huge decisions they made that I'm not that impressed with and not that happy about. So hopefully they roll those back, although I have little hope at this point. But I've learned how to work around them a little bit. But that said, on Reddit, there's a channel called Banned for Life, I think is what it's called, number 4, Banned for Life. And the reason they say that is because if you are talking about anything that, let's see if this is actually streaming. This should be streaming. Yes, it is streaming. Okay. If you are talking about, I hope we heard the first part of this. Okay, I just have to keep talking and assume that you did hear the first part of this. Yeah, Reddit has a new policy. Reddit's about to go public. And it's so funny because one of the premier moderators on Reddit is, according to many people's guesses, Ghislaine Maxwell's account, that she had a super admin privileges on Reddit to point out everything she wanted in those big Reddit groups that really influenced a lot of people. And as soon as she got arrested, that channel went blank. That user stopped posting. So people think that that was her. That said, if you're in some of these groups, mostly the ones around coronavirus, the ones where the powers that be are dramatically and rapidly losing control of the narrative. If you're on those groups, if they even see you're a member of them, if you post in any of them at all, you immediately get a bunch of emails. You've been banned from this group and this group and this group. And that's why they call it Banned for Life, because if you're posting in some of the coronavirus groups at all, they'll ban you from groups that have nothing to do with the virus. They'll ban you from groups that have nothing to do with it. And then they say, well, the reason is the people are brigading. They're getting together and saying, we're going to come to these groups in Reddit and we're going to post all of this anti-vax nonsense. Wah ha 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 ha. You know, and actually it's probably just people who have been damaged or injured or are rational or logical, posting their own stuff about it. This last video was actually deleted from YouTube because I used the wrong words. I guess I should say the flu or the or whatever JP does to not get banned and censored and shut down and shut off. But yeah, why should I censor myself? I mean, come censor me, bitches, if that's what you want to do, right? And my good friend Isaac came by and recommended a bunch of other platforms. The biggest one that I am on usually is Odyssey. The only issue that I have with some of these other platforms is who knows how long they'll be solvent, because theoretically they don't take money from advertisers, so we don't know how long they're going to be all right. Number 2, we don't necessarily know who's behind them all the time. And number 3, this is the worst one. You click on videos often and no video data reaches you. So they probably have limited bandwidths. They have a limited number of servers. YouTube, of course, has a veritable unlimited number of servers and an unlimited amount of money to do it all with. So when you click on a YouTube video, with very few exceptions, it starts playing immediately if they haven't banned it, deleted it, whatever, right? My friend Lloyd talked about this he said July, I think it was 2019, in about June, July of 2019, all of a sudden, all of his organic traffic about electro smog and electrosensitivity and EMFs started getting banned from Google. They weren't sending him any more data, any more people, just through organic search. And I'm not even sure if he was allowed to advertise on there anymore. So whereas he was getting hundreds and sometimes thousands of visitors per day, as far as I know, I mean, he built giant lists, so he must have had a lot of traffic. All of a sudden, Google decides in June, July 2019, hey, we're not going to allow you, we're not going to send you any traffic anymore. And so, well, once Google gets rid of you, what do? You know, there's not a ton of things left for you as far as the organic stuff goes. And what they want actually is for everyone to pay to play, to pay to participate on the web, on the net. They want everything being managed with money, everything being seen through the lens of money. And even many things that I find are the biggest healing transformational modalities and powerful implements, they won't even let me do this. They won't even let me do that if I get a so-called high-risk account. They've told me we categorically ban anyone talking about specific topics online. And you can go find out what they are. They're adult, they're drug-related, sometimes gambling, whatever, right? And if you listen to the list of things that the guy was against the guy Comstock, who arrested all these people for free expression and for even trying to teach married couples about sex or promoting contraception or any of this stuff, you know, putting people in prison for this at the turn of the last century, then you know what the for and against is, which is why I say the end of Western civilization is upon us. And there's not much we can do about it. Well, we could follow the teachings of Jesus, I suppose. That's an idea. And I talk about that in my satsang. So if you want to come to a satsang, they are Sunday nights. They are no longer open. They will be closed. So you need to contact me to figure out how to get an invite for that. Anyway, I started off talking about, I didn't want to talk about modern events, current events. And then I went in 10 different directions. But the reason I said that was on this platform where there is some still not total censorship happening. And what people are doing, they're posting on Imgur, on some of these other sites. And then they are advertising from there that they're linking these graphics. So they're not even hosting them directly on what's the name of the site? They're not even hosting them directly on Reddit, right? So they're not even hosting them directly on Reddit, but they're able to show some videos. And I saw a video, an awesome video, where we were talking about an awesome video, an awesomely horrific video is a better way to say it, where not just talking, but instead we have policemen in New Zealand kneeling down on a naked woman's head at the protests. They're arresting people, they're tearing people out of the crowd, they're throwing them to the ground with strength and malice, and then they're kneeling on their heads, even if they're a naked girl who is obviously very violent and dangerous for the police. That is sarcasm alert. And so you're sitting here watching police in Western countries take protesters who are against vax mandates, who are against mask mandates, who are against mandates, right? And just telling them that, telling us, showing us what they stand for and what they believe, right? That this is Western civilization. This is how things are when things are going well. This is honesty and truth and power and light and just everything you should believe in and trust in and go for if you're in the Western world. And this is democracy and freedom and all of this. And the people from these places, right, the people that represent the people, which this is all nonsense. This is all BS. This is all smokescreen. This is all quatch nonsense, whatever you want to call it, right? um, yeah, that was good. Okay. No. So these people are happy to step on women's heads. Sorry, little distraction going on over here. But they're happy as police in the Western world. And they say, well, why are you abusing these women or killing them? And they'll say things like, well, this was just following orders, right? Well, where have we heard that before? Just following orders. Oh, okay. Then it's all right then, I guess, if you're just following orders to torture and harm civilians and hurt people and kneel on a naked girl's head while you handcuff her. And yeah, this makes tons of sense. So anyway, getting less and less distractions as time goes on. But if you watch the so-called Western world of freedom, now notice when there were all of these fiery but mostly peaceful protests going, their words, not mine, and these fiery protests were about Black Lives Matter in the middle of the pandemic, setting buildings on fire, no masks, no social distancing, and that was all okay. And now people get up and have peaceful protests. The truckers in Ottawa is an example. This woman in New Zealand is an example. And they get their heads kneeled on, or they're stealing their gasoline, or they're stealing their firewood. These people are feeding the homeless. It's interesting, when people get together for a good cause, they instantly start helping. Happens almost every time. They're feeding the homeless. They're clothing people. They're helping people out. They're gathering money. They're dispersing it to people whose jobs have been threatened by the premier of the Emperor of Canada. And all of that's happening, and then they're labeled as white supremacists. And then the Sikhs and the Indians are standing up, and the natives are standing up, and they're saying, and the black people are standing up saying, yeah, we're white supremacists, Trudeau. That makes so much sense. What are you talking about? What are you even? It's like they don't even look at the slightest level of truth or honesty in all of this. They're willing to say anything, do anything to just to defame, push down, attack, discredit any movement that is against the powers that be in this and the status quo that's trying to take over everyone's lives. But yet, when the fires are going on, the buildings are getting destroyed and bricks are getting thrown through windows, all of that's fine. It's no problem. Don't worry about that. That's just a peaceful but somewhat fiery protest, right? And it's just so obvious. So here you have, in the Western world, these New Zealand cops, and I mean cops from anywhere. Cops are cops, right? A cab, as they say. Kneeling on this girl's head, and they're willing to do that in a so-called free democratic country, right? What do you think they're willing to do in non-free, non-democratic countries, in despotic countries, in dictatorships, right? I mean, if that's how we are in civilization, and that just shows you the police and the military, they're there to enforce the rules and the desires and the will of the status quo. That's all they do. If you had, now let me talk briefly about, well, how do you do some sort of structure for society otherwise? Google committees of vigilance and go look at San Francisco. San Francisco, they used to have a committee of people who were in charge of keeping the peace, and they would keep the peace. And it was not always easy or pretty, but traditionally a community creates a constable, and a justice of the peace, and a sheriff, and they can assign these roles to people. So if you want to be in charge of keeping the peace, then you can be our constable, you can be our sheriff. You're paid by us, the people, to make sure that there is peace in this area, not by the people up top, not by the political powers, not by the corporate powers that be. None of that nonsense, right? You're paid directly by the people, and you're responsible to the people, and you have the powers that the people delegate, which again, people cannot delegate powers which they do not have. People don't understand this, but you can't delegate the power to tax unless you control the power unless you honestly think you have the power to take someone else's money, which none of us do. That's not right. Or take anyone else's property. That is taxation. You can't delegate the right to tax to a government when you never had that right or that power in the first place. And that's why we have the beast. The beast has this image that, well, whatever the beast does is right. If the beast decides to level entire cities, and if the beast decides to kick people off of their land, and if the beast decides to murder this group of people, and if the beast decides to, then it's all right because it's the beast. You know, I mean, the beast has all power, and so the beast or the state takes over the power for God in our society, and that beast and its violence are the thing that is going to deliver us. So we think we have police and military and that they're somehow protecting us and helping us. No, they're holding the power of the status quo. I mean, watch what the police do when they get told by the mayor or the governor to do something. Very seldom do they not do that thing. Why? Because their pensions and their income and their financing and their money and their value and their importance and their is all wrapped up in them doing what they're told, because they're paid by the government, the state, the beast, to hold the status quo. They're not paid by you and me. They don't serve you and me. In fact, there was a Supreme Court case, and someone who's smarter about these things than I am can look it up, and in the Supreme Court case, they say unequivocally, help me with that word, people, that the police have no responsibility whatsoever to serve and protect anyone. Do you know why they're called officers? Because that's what people who work for a corporation are called, right? The chief executive officer, right? So they're officers of a corporation, the corporation of the city or the state. In other words, they are private security. They don't belong to you. They're not your employees. If you see a cop come behind you, do you feel relaxed and protected, or do you get afraid? Why are you afraid? Because they are the collection agencies at the very least, and the enforcement arm of the mob at the very most. Why do you think so often? Look at the Rampart scandals. Look at Oakland PD. Look at all of these. Go watch Serpico, for goodness sake. I mean, if you 30, 40, 50 years ago, and it was obvious already. And if you look at the beginning of police, you can find out in Bad Quaker podcast, he talks about how police were brought together to attack and harm the, quote, dirty Irish in England when England was taking over Ireland. And that's what the police's job was. Well, the police get together with the mafia, and they are buds. They exchange information. There are people who are protected by various police powers who are in the mafia in the United States, other places. You don't understand that the whole structure of everything, intelligence agencies, police, military, they're all there to keep their citizens under control. We have a Air Force base just down the road. Why? Because China is going to invade Utah? No, it's to control the populace. It's to control the people. It's to make sure they're paying their taxes. It's to make sure they're docile. It's to make sure they're obedient, right? That's what it's all for. And we pay all this money for them to violate us. And as Lysander Spooner says, as soon as someone has power to tax you, to hire people, to oppress you, you have no rights anymore. Because those people can do anything and everything to punish you. What are you going to do to stop them? You don't own the courts. As my dad said, the prosecutor and the judge in any trial, in any state trial, the same person signs their checks, and that's the government. So he says, how is this not a conflict of interest, right? The whole system, they set up the whole system. They prevent you from using any other system if you have an earnest conflict. You're not allowed to go solve it yourself. You're not allowed to have your alternative means of resolving conflicts if the other person is not amenable to that. So therefore you have to go through them. They are a monopoly. Wherever there's a monopoly, as we know, power gathers. And what I think it was Rockefeller who said competition is a sin, right? It has to be a monopoly for him. Everything needs to be run from one place where the status quo owns and controls everything. And that's how it works. And there may be 5 oil companies, but are there really? And there may be 6 news and entertainment companies, but are there really? You know, And but thank goodness there's individual people posting and showing us the truth of what's going on. And unfortunately, you have to dig quite a ways to figure it out. But I'm feeling less and less alone as I see how many people are on the side of relative truth and honesty and openness and service and love and connection and freedom instead of dictatorship and fear, right? So anyway, the police are doing these things. They have done these things for hundreds of years. They will always do these things until there are no police left. Sure, have your sheriffs, have your constables, have your committees of vigilance who decide how to have freedom within a community. But don't pretend that there's going to be freedom or peace because you have a military or a police to, with violence, enforce what is happening. And the more that you see the police and the military work together against civilians and in the name of the corporate state, the more you understand where they exactly stand and who they represent and whose work they do. Yeah. So, I mean, you watch the movie about the guy who was carting weapons. I forget his name. Weapons and drugs and things to South America for and in behalf of the U.S. government. Then you will understand that how this all works. You'll understand how the intelligence agencies tell someone to do something and then they do it, and then they completely wash their hands of him. Later he gets murdered. They lie about everything they do. And if it's not obvious by now, I mean, enjoy the end. I don't know what else to say, because for me it's been obvious for a long time, and we have to create a new, beautiful, better world, and I want to do that. I want to do that with you. All right, okay. Shall we do that? All right. All my love. Take care. Mwah.